Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the STEM Digital School. This is Coding for Grade 8 and I'm your presenter, Mr. Paul de Klerk. There you can see my email address on the screen. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask me that we maybe do not discuss in this lesson, you can send me a mail there. As well, if you want to perhaps share any of the creations that you make. So I just need to run through a few things. This is our second class today, so I'm not sure who's new and who's not. And for those of you who were here yesterday, then this can just be a quick review. So coding is the art of learning a language that computers speak. Okay, so computer code is the language that computers use to communicate. And it isn't only for them to communicate between each other, it's also for the programs on the computer to tell the hardware, meaning the hard drive and the RAM and the things that you actually see, what to do and how to function. And it also tells the programs how to work. Okay. So everything that you see on this computer screen has been created using computer code, from Windows to Zoom to the PowerPoint presentation that you see here. There is code hidden behind all of that. Now we cannot see it. That code gets changed and designed through something, and then it gets displayed to us. And there's a very fancy name for that, but we can just accept it as what we see is not the computer code. What we see is the final product. So there are many different languages. So very similar to how language between people has developed, the language of computer code has also developed, because there was obviously computer code that started in different countries. So many people had different ideas on how to do it. And so some of the code was more suited for certain things than others. JavaScript, as an example, is being used very widely, and a lot of games are built using JavaScript. But then again, also some of the functions on the internet is created using JavaScript. So that's just one of the languages. I'm not sure how many there are. I don't think everybody knows exactly how many there are, because there are some people that use computer code to do bad things. We call them hackers, and they can very often create their own computer code that nobody has even ever seen before. So that just gives you an idea of what coding is. Now, we are not that advanced here. What we do is we use something called block coding, so that we can see in a visual way what we are doing, okay? Because code is text and line based. So we are doing block coding, which basically takes those texts and lines and puts it into a nicely displayed block so that we can more easily understand. You have to be very grateful that these things are around for you to learn from. When I started learning computer coding, these things were not there. We had to learn using text and line-based coding, and it was quite tedious sometimes. Anyway, so that is what computer code is, and that is what we are going to be learning here. Just a few practical things. The chat box is there for you to ask questions and for me to gauge what your knowledge is. So sometimes I will ask questions and then you need to answer me in the chat box. Also, I share links in there, and I only share the link to what we are doing once we are on that screen doing it. I'm not going to share links now. I'll share it as soon as we are on the coding interface. To do it now will just distract you. Okay. So cameras stay off. If you accidentally switch it on, we will switch it off for you. If you do it 5 times, we will remove you from the group. If you do not obey the rules of the chat box, you keep chatting with your friends, or you keep telling me about your dog, although I love dogs, this is not the place for that. I will remove you from the lesson. Okay. That being said, for those of you that might be watching the live stream on YouTube, you need to ask your parents, or if you yourself have an email address, you need to go to africateengeeks.com, go and sign up for the newsletter, and there you will receive the links to these lessons. This is something that we've started doing to make sure that we have legitimate people coming into the lessons to try and keep everyone safe in the digital space. So if you go there, you can register, you can receive the links, and then you can come and join us in the classroom so that you can have access to the chat box. Right, so that's basically it. That's all the nitty-gritty is done. Now we can get into the fun stuff. Okay, so here are some coding principles. Now, these coding principles, I didn't find them in any book. I didn't learn them in any school. These are the ones that I figured out myself as time went by. I've been using computer code for 6 years, and I've created them in such a way so that when you know these and you have them set as a base for you to work from, and you create these into a habit, then you can take these principles and apply them to any computer code language that you will be learning. So these principles, they're not only based on what we are doing here today, they will also help you in the future if you take note of them to learn any other computer code, right? So very often, like at the moment when I create websites and web content, I use 3 different computer languages at the same time. So it is important that you have a good foundation because you are often going to use more than one coding language. So the first principle is we want to identify the goal. So here in the platform that we'll be using, we are receiving puzzles that we need to solve. Sometimes it's a maze, sometimes we have to make a character dance, and we need to identify the exact goal of that puzzle. So very often they give us a puzzle where the character has to move a lot, but on certain positions in the puzzle, the character has to do something. So it's very easy for us to just start making the character move around and forget about placing the action blocks that are going to make him do something at a specific place. Right, so next up, we want to follow the problem-solving workflow. So my advice is always, many times this goal that you've identified will need 10 to 15 blocks of code. So I always advise everyone to break it down into smaller problems, and then you identify the smaller problems, you create a solution for that smaller problem, you test the solution for that smaller problem, and if you need to, then you adjust your solution. Now, once you've solved all the smaller problems, then you have reached the goal. Okay, so you're not trying to write 30 blocks of code at the same time. You're writing 3 at a time or 4 at a time, which makes it a lot easier. And that is also tied into this principle at the bottom, apply information management practices. So we want to separate the code to identify exactly which sequence of code is solving which problem. Now, in the first few puzzles, like this we're doing today, lesson 1, dance party, puzzle 7 to 13, that isn't so important because we're not creating a lot of code. But once we get into the later lessons, that becomes very important. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to just quickly do a run through. I'm going to send a link to you guys in the chat box, just not yet, but I'll show you where you can click. Then you can come back to this page, and on your own time, you can come and spend some time here and look at these lessons and see what they're all about. Okay, so I want to go back to this number 7. And now I just need to make sure this is muted. Sorry. Yes, it is. And then we don't watch the videos during class time. So I just click them off when we are in the lesson. If it will allow me to do that, there we go. And then you guys can obviously watch the videos at your home if you'd like. But because we are working through a live feed, we don't do that. Okay. So if you click up here, once you've opened this link, right, I've sent you a link in the chat box. You can click on it, navigate to it. Then you can, in the right-hand top corner, between the minimize and the close X and minus symbols that you have in your browser window or in your browser window, you can click on the center one. It says restore down if you hover on it. That's going to make your browser smaller, and then you can just drag it on the sides. It'll look similar to this, and then just make it bigger or smaller, the entire window, so that you can have it next to the zoom screen. You can also size the zoom screen down. I unfortunately can't show you because if I size down zoom on my side, it just keeps displaying the same on your side. Okay. So if you've opened this link and you want to go and do some other lessons, specifically after this class, you can click here and then you can go back to the screen where we just were. These are puzzles we've already done. The white ones are puzzles that are coming. Those are lesson extras. We don't do them in class. Again, if you keep the link afterwards, then you can go and play around with that. These are the instructions that will tell us what the goal is of each puzzle. Over here is our play area where we will see the results of the code that we make. So all the magic happens here. This is our toolbox, and now this toolbox contains all the blocks that we might have to use while we are solving this problem or finding the solution for this puzzle. We drag these new blocks onto our workspace over here, and we just drop, and then it'll stay there. If we don't want it anymore, we just take it back off onto our toolbox. Okay, most of them have toggles, so you can change certain things, but you can't just randomly change things. You need to pay attention to what you are changing. Right, so we did this one yesterday. I'm just going to talk through the code. One last thing, you can start over by clicking there, and this is the code that I was talking about. This is how I learned to code in this format of line and text-based coding. So you can always come and view this, but we are working on this, which is a lot easier, okay, and faster to learn and to understand. So I'm just going to talk through this, and then we can move on to the next puzzle. And I'm doing this to give you time to navigate to the link that I've shared in the chat box. So first up, we know the run button is linked to the setup block. They're the same color. So when I click here, whatever is touching the setup block is going to start working. It's going to be activated. This code will run. That's why it's called the run button. Code runs sequentially. So whatever is placed first will happen first. Whatever's placed last will happen last. Okay. Sometimes just due to the fact that there isn't enough space, like here, this set the background, make the dancers, and change their size will all happen at the same time, okay? It's just placed underneath each other or after one another because of the space constraint, okay? If you were doing this on a computer using text and line-based code, you would have been able to do it next to each other, although we never do it that way because it is difficult to read it. Right, so here we have the background effect, and that is just going to change this block from being white to having a color or a pattern in there, right? And we can choose, this will sort of change the color here if we say black and white as an example, and this is going to be the pattern that is displayed behind. Let's choose flowers just to be funny. So then we told the code to make a new duck, okay? You can choose any animal that you'd like. The goal of this puzzle was we wanted to make the backup dancers the same size. That's all we had to do here, is to make the backup dancers the same size. But you have to create the backup dancer before you can resize it. So here we said, okay, we have a duck, and the duck is called backup dancer number 1. Now this part here, this label is vitally important because we are going to be changing the properties of this specific sprite. Now these little characters, we call them sprites, because we will be changing the properties of this sprite. We need to give it a proper label. If it doesn't have a proper label, then we won't know where to assign the new properties to. Okay, so this is backup dancer 1, and he is being created on the right hand side. And now we're saying set, so we are assigning this property to this dancer, backup dancer 1. That's how we know it's going to that dancer. We want to set the size to 70. Now, yesterday I was asked in the grade 9 class what the 70 means. This just refers to the size. I don't know what unit of size they're using here, right? So many times in computers language, especially stuff on the internet, you speak in percentages. So 100% would mean that the thing would be as big as it possibly can be on any given screen, because there are different screen sizes. So if we make it 100%, it's going to be at the largest size that the original file was before it was uploaded to the internet. And it's going to stay 100% of that size, even if it's on a different screen. So obviously, if it's on your phone, it's going to be smaller, but it's still going to be set at 100%, right? So that's a ratio type thing. Other times they use pixels, okay? So I assume that these are pixels, but I might be wrong, I'm not sure. Actually, I know this can't be pixels because I know that this window is 400 pixels across. So this is definitely not pixels. I assume that this is percentages, but that doesn't matter. The important thing to know is that we can change this size, okay? And that is going to set the size for this dancer. Right, so this one is making yet another dancer, and this one this is a robot. We can also choose another one if you'd like to. That doesn't matter. And this one is called Backup Dancer 2. Again, very important. And we are placing this one at the left, okay? And then again, this is why this label is important. We want to set this Backup Dancer 2, the size to 70 as well. So the important thing is here, not which number you put in here, but to make sure that the two backup dancers, Backup Dancer 1 and Backup Dancer 2, this number is the same size, because that is what we have here. They are saying, making their size smaller, you can make, there we go, make both backup dancers the same size. That is the goal. So we cannot have this one size and this one another size. The two backup dancers, their size should be the same. Now this is the lead dancer, and it is a frog. So this, again, you can choose. I'm going to change it to the moose just because I like the moose. And this one is called the lead dancer. This is the label. And we are generating the lead dancer in the center. And we are saying set the lead dancer to 120. Now we don't need to do this. I just did it yesterday as an example. Okay, so this is not needed to reach the goal. If you only added these two, then you have successfully completed this puzzle. But why stop there? Okay. Then we said repeat after every 2 measures. So the lead dancer is going to do the next. So if you go down here, you'll see there are many different dance moves here. And if it is next, it just means that each time this block is run, it's going to choose the next one. So if it started with body roll, then it's going to go to clap high, then to dab, then to double down, then to drop. Okay. If you set this to previous, then it's obviously going to go backwards from drop to double down, to dab, to clap high, to body roll. If it gets here, it's not going into these ones. It's going to go back to the bottom one, which is zombie. Okay, then this or that, then going up again. If you set it to random, it's going to choose perhaps body roll, then drop, then dab, then all the way down to zombie, then fresh. So it's going to be a completely random selection. Okay. So we said we want these moves to be the next one, and we want it to start off to the left. Okay, so if you make this the clap high, I'm going to do that so that I can show you the difference. Okay, so this is basically our code. We've also set the dance moves for Backup Dancer 1 and Backup Dancer 2. So let's run this. And now we can see we have the black and white flower there. Now, after 2 measures, the move starts clapping. And you see that he started clapping on that side. Now, if we reset this and we change this arrow to the right, the same thing is going to happen, but the moose is going to clap on the duck's side. Okay, so that's what this little arrow means. And it just gives us that so that we can make the 2 backup dancers start to do their move in a different direction. Okay, so I've talked a lot now. I didn't ask you many questions because we were doing a run through. But if you're happy and if you are ready, type a yes in the chat box, because in the next puzzle, I'm going to be asking you which blocks to put where. So if you want me to talk on this again, say no. If you want me to carry on, say yes. And while you do that, I'm taking a sip of water. Okay, let us continue. Right, I think we are good to go. We are ready to do this. I just want to see something here in the background. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. I like to make this bigger. That's where I like to start. If you like to start elsewhere, that's fine, but I like to do that so that I can see more clearly what's happening. One thing that I forgot to mention is you can choose different songs here. It doesn't help me to do that because my site is muted, but you can do that if you want to on your side. Okay, so let's read the instructions. Dancers have a tint property that can add a layer of color. Try changing the tint of one of your dancers. Tints will make the color you choose. Tints will mix the color you choose with the colors of the dancer. Okay, so what this is saying is If we put a tint over the dancer is not going to change its color. It's just going to have a different color on top of the color that it already is. Okay, you'll see that and understand it once we do it. But the goal of this is try changing the tint of one of your dancers. Okay, so this is very clear. We don't have to do it for all the dancers. We only need to do it for one. Now, before we even start doing anything here, my advice is just run this so that you can see what you're working with. Remember, this code is not code that we created. This is code that the program is giving us. So we can obviously understand what is going to happen by reading through this and making sense of it. But it's so much easier to just click there. And now we can see, okay, good. So we've got a dancer left top, left bottom, and right bottom. Okay, and there's a tropical sparkles background effect, and they all change into different dance moves. Now, none of that, the dance moves, the background effect, none of that has to do with this. We want to change the tint of one of the dancers. So we can already, and this is where it would have been nice if we had comments, if we could have said this comment in here, this sets only the background. So we're not going to change anything there to reach the goal. This only creates the dance moves that they're going to be making. So we're not changing anything here to reach our goal. We only need to focus on the dances, the sprites that are being created. That's all we need to focus on. So if we had comments in here, we could have known this, okay? So now that we have this, it says one of the dances. So it's going to be up to you to choose which one we're going to be changing, okay? And then I need to show you the blocks that we're going to use to do that. So this one was where we set the dancer size. This is where we're going to set the dancer's tint. So we need to add this one. And I want to ask you, where do you want me to put this? So don't tell me above the robot or above the unicorn or under the unicorn. I want to see something like before the robot or after the robot. Okay, because code runs sequentially, I want you to start thinking that way. So tell me, where do you want me to put this in the chat box? The first answer is going to get the placement. Before the bear. Good. Before the bear. Great. Now, I want you to pay attention to something here. This is saying set top dancer 1 tint to that color. Okay. If I change this to bottom dancer 2, is this going to change the tint on the bear, or will it change the tint on the unicorn? In the chat box, tell me what's going to happen there. Will we be changing the tint of the bear, or will we change the tint of the unicorn? Ah, Tanisha says the unicorn. Okay, good. So even though code runs sequentially, meaning what we put first will happen first, this is all going to start at the same time because it's in a setup block. So that is why we need to, thank you, Nhlangla. This is, the label is going to determine which dancer's property we will be changing, or which dancer we will be adding a new property to. So first one in the chat box, tell me. Now, I don't want to see bear, frog, robot, or unicorn. I want to see bottom dancer 1, top dancer 2, top dancer 1. Which one do you want to change? First one in the chat box gets it. Top dancer 1. Good. Okay. Woo, that was quick. Oh, you are all in agreement. Good. So now we can change the tint color to any of these colors. Now, I'm not going to ask you which color you want because we're going to do 2 or 3 so that we can properly see. It's important for us to, before we do that, let's start on red. We need to see that the top dancer 1 is going to generate at the top left. Okay, so we know when we run this, we need to check over here to see the effect of what we've done. So let's do that. And now it has a tint, but I really cannot see the tint. That is extremely interesting. Let's see if it keeps on running, if it told us maybe we did something wrong. I don't think so. Use it to change the dancer's tint. Hey, we've done that. I think I've made a mistake here. Let's see. What if we put it? I just want to see something. What did it say here? Try changing the tint of one of your dancers. Hi, Tyrese. Okay, so sometimes that happens and you make mistakes, even me. So let's see if we can figure this out, okay? So now we go back and we read. They have a tint property that can add a layer of color. Try changing the tint of one of your dancers. Tints will mix the color you choose with the colors of the dancer. So use the set tint block to change a dancer's tint. So we did that. Okay, we put it after that. Perhaps we need to put it, there we go. That is extremely interesting. Oh, you know why? This is very good for us to have seen this. Okay, so I found the solution and I think I know what I did wrong there. So I hope you guys can bear with me while I explain to you. I told you that code runs sequentially and everything in the setup block will happen at the same time. Now, it does happen at the same time with regards to what we see here, but it still does something first and then something next and then something next, okay? So it still starts by doing this, then this, then this, then this, then this. It just does it so quickly that we cannot see it happening in those steps. We only see everything being there right at once. So when we placed this on top of this dancer, there was no dancer to set the tint to because this dancer has not been created yet. It has not been made. So we need to move this to be underneath the dancer. And if this statement is correct, then it should work even if we put it right at the bottom, because now the dancers have already been created. Yes, and there it works. You can see that, right? So remember that. And now, because we know we have those principles in our head, code runs sequentially, we can figure out where the mistake was. And because we used information management practices, when our code didn't work, we didn't go looking for the problem down here or up there, because we know we didn't change anything there. We were only changing here, so the problem had to be here. Okay, so do you guys understand what I just said? Does that make sense? Type a yes in the chat box or a no if you don't understand. Okay. Planla says yes. Okay, good. Oops, I just closed the chat box. That's not what I wanted to do. Just wanted to move it out of the way. Okay, so now we can see here. That's going to change that tint to that color. But why stop there? We've reached the goal, but we can still play. So let's set the next dancer. Remember, we need to change the label. No, top dancer 2. And let's make that color purple. And the bottom dancer 1. This we can just move out of the way. We're going to set that to orange. And then bottom dancer 2. Let's leave it at that funny blue. Now, if we run this, we'll see they all have a tint. Okay, and we can see that where they have colors, the tint blends in. So you can see if we make them all the same tint, they will all have a red glow, but there are still shades within the tint. The red on this and the red on that doesn't look exactly the same. Okay, I unfortunately can't make this any bigger. Okay, are you ready? Can we go on to puzzle 9? Okay, I thought so. I just need to run this until it gives me that option. Otherwise, I don't know if it'll save our progress at the top. Another thing I just want to tell you guys while we're waiting for this to run, if we realize we've made a mistake, don't just go crazy and removing code and adding code and removing code and adding code. Take your time, slowly read through what you've done and try to make sense of it. Okay. I see it so often when people make mistakes on a computer, they just start hitting letters on the keyboard and clicking on random stuff, thinking that's going to make a difference. It doesn't work that way. Just stay calm and then we can have a look. Right, I see somebody raise their hand. I don't respond to raised hands. So if you have a question, you're welcome to type it in the chat box. Oops, I made a mistake there. I'm just going to share this link again for you guys, just in case somebody's missed it. And there we go. Now we know how to change the dancer's properties. We can also make the same properties automatically respond to the music using this block. Okay. Let me just go up a bit. Oh, come on. Right unicorn begins size following bass. Okay. So we'll see what that means in a second. The program uses the music's bass volume, the low sounds, to control one dancer's height. Can you make the other dancers respond to the music too? Okay, so what the goal is, we want to make the other dancers respond to the music as well. Okay, so they're telling us one is already going to respond to the music, and then we need to make the others do the same thing. Now, it doesn't need to be the same response. We just want them to respond. So here we have, let's run it and see before we even do anything. Okay. So I'm assuming there isn't any bass yet because, oh, look at that. Now it's bigger. Now it's smaller. Ooh, that sort of hurts my eyes. Okay. So what we've done now, or what we could see happening there is the left shark begins the height following the bass line. Okay. So for those of you that know music, the bass line is played by the bass guitar and the bass drum in the band. If it's more electronic, they replicate those sounds using computers, but it's still a bass sound. It's a very deep sound. The low notes. So this is saying the left shark begins the height following the bass. Okay. So now what we want is we want to change the right unicorn. We want to add that same thing. So we're going to make sure that that attribute is going to go to the right unicorn. And now we can try to choose anything other. I think we need to do rotation, just so that there's a bit less movement in that thing. And we can make it follow the bass, the mids, or the treble. So these are your high note, these are your low notes, these are the in-between notes, okay? Let's keep it at the bass because then they're going to start at the same time. And they said that we need to make the other dancer respond to the music. So it should be to anyone. Right. So let's see what happens. Ah, this is not the type of rotation I was hoping for. But okay, we can see that something's changing there. Still difficult to look at. So now we can actually start doing this and see if we can't get the tint on both of them to change following the bass. I think that's going to make it more easy on the eyes. Okay, so there we can see they're tinted in a dark red. Let's see if the color changes or whether the, oh, there we go. So you see now, you can clearly see that both of them are changing one of their properties due to the bass line. Okay, if you can hear the music, then you would understand. So on your computer, it's really important that you switch on the sound when you practice this, okay? Are you guys ready? Can we go on to puzzle 10? This one was easy. We just added one block of code. Okay, I've got many students saying yes. I think we can get going. Okay. Right, so this is telling us new block, pay attention, there's a new block. Okay, so there's a new block there, and we're going to discuss that difference, but first we need to identify the goal. That's our first step, always. The when up pressed event block lets you run code when the up arrow is pressed. So before we even carry on any further, we need to quickly identify 2 or 3 new things that we have here and talk through it. So all of a sudden we have these arrows here under the play area. They are clickable. Okay, so whenever you're using a computer and you see the mouse pointer, if you can see my mouse pointer, it has a circle around it. It's an arrow now. As soon as it's over a button that's clickable, it changes into a little hand. Okay, so that shows us that this is clickable. So the same way that this run button is linked to the setup block, these arrows are now linked to this new block. And this is saying when up is pressed, but you can change it to look at those. And now you're going to tell me, but sir, these aren't all under the play area. And you are right, they are not. This block is also linked to your computer's keyboard. Meaning if I press the up arrow on my computer, you won't see it now because there's nothing to show you. But when I press the up arrow on my computer's keyboard, it's going to be the same as me clicking on that button there. Okay. But you can use any of these, left, down, right, space, enter, any one of the letters and any one of the numbers. Okay. For our purposes, I'm going to leave it on the up arrow just because I can click on the up arrow here. And I want you to see how this responds when I click there. If I'm using my keyboard, you'll only see the response there. You won't see me activating that. Okay. So that's the one thing that we have. Another thing that we have is up until now, once we've done something and we change the dancer's move, that changes forever. Now, what I mean by forever is we just put this in here. If I put it there, okay, just move down a bit so we can see more clearly. If we put it there, this is going to be the dance move. Now it says forever, but it's not forever. It's going to be until we tell a different dance move to happen. So this means that this dance move will change and it'll stay changed until we tell something else to happen. So here we can see, obviously, if we make this a dab now, once 2 bars are, or 2 measures have been completed, it will change to the next dance move. So from, let me just quickly go down, from the dab, the next one will then be the double down. Okay. And then this is also set to forever, but what that means is it's going to change. It'll be this way until we tell it to do something else. Okay. The new block we have here says this one, left dancer, do dab once. This dance move will only happen when we activate it. So if we put it here, and this one wasn't here, let me just put that in there. So for every 2 measures, this dancer would dab once, and then it would go back to whatever dance move the default dance move was, or the default dance that we created here. Okay. So this once is only going to happen 1 time and then stop. So we want to use that. Okay. Now let's see if what we're going to use. You might change the dance move, change the dancer's properties, or do a quick move just once. There we go. Be creative and look out for new blocks. So our goal here is basically to just test and play with everything that we have available, but we want to experiment with the new things that they've given us. So here we can see there's a when up arrow pressed, there's dancers following the bass, there's all these things that we've seen before. So the only one we have, excuse me, we have that's new is this once. So we're going to place this under the when up arrow is pressed, and then we're going to run this. And now you'll see that the code is running and they are just swaying around. Now we have the left dancer starting with that move, but when we click on up, he does the dab once. Okay, now he's changed to dab because it's going to the next. Let me just set that to 1. I'm going to take the repeat out. Going to make the left dancer do a move. I'm going to make the right dancer do a move. I want them to floss because then you can more easily see. And then I'm also going to, when the up arrow is pressed, we want the right dancer to dab to the right hand side once. Okay, so I changed the code in this way, not because you have to do it, but because I want to more clearly demonstrate to you what's happening. So here you can see, this one wasn't set to right dancer. You see how important those labels are, right? Let's try again. Okay. So now you can see they're flossing. And when I hit the up arrow, both of them dab once. And there you can see both of them dab once. Okay. If I change this one to dab forever, what's going to happen is after I've pressed this, what did I do? Left answer. That needs to be right answer. Sorry. After I've pressed this, you can see he now stays in the dab move. This one goes back to the floss move. If I hit the arrow again, he just flosses one time, but this one stays in that move. His move is now changed because it's a forever block. Okay, so do you guys now understand what this went up button means, or what this went up block means, and the do move once? Okay, this is easy stuff. Okay, can I move on? Can I move on? Let's see if we can fit in. We can't fit in one more. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to give you that link, and then you can go and practice by yourselves. Okay. These puzzles aren't difficult, but they have a lot of code. So there is a lot of explaining that needs to happen. But this is actually one of the more fun ones, especially if you can switch on the music at your own place. And just quickly jump into this and share it to you there. Right, so remember, go and do this on your own homework. You can send me the results. You want to read the instructions, identify the goal, break it into smaller problems here, solve each problem at a time. Okay, test the code and adjust it if you need to. I'm going to go back to the screen to make sure you all have access to my email. There's my email address. Please use it. Okay, you're more than welcome to use it. And tomorrow's lesson, once we are finished with the last two lessons for last two puzzles for lesson 1, we're going to go into lesson 2, which is programming with Angry Birds. This one is a lot of fun to do, and it helps us to create a good starting point for us to learn from. Okay, thank you to the STEM Digital School. You can follow us on these social media handles. Use these hashtags when you post about us on social. Invite your friends to come and join us tomorrow. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.